guys, it's Thorin. I'm making my video for the week because this is a thing that I've committed to do in order to keep my life on track while I get back to work and worry about publishing stuff and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I was trying to figure out what to talk about today, and it occurred to me that in the last video I had meant to talk about my new Witches and Pagans column, but I completely forgot. So, for those of you who don't know this is a thing, this is Witches&Pagans Magazine. It's one of the few print magazines that's still available in our communities. It's like Pangaea isn't a thing anymore. We've had lots of others, but anyway, this magazine came out in like 2002. I remember being in college, so it would have been the early 2000s, and it used to be called New Witch Magazine, not your mother's broomstick. And then a couple of years ago, it became Witches and Pagans, because I think some of the stuff with Pangaea like merged into New Witch. And anyway, if you are interested in pagan magazines, this is one of your best bets. You can still buy it at Barnes & Noble, and chain bookstores that have extensive magazine collections will have it, or you can subscribe. But anyway, I got a column last year, and it's a quarterly magazine, so it's taken this long to come out, but my first column came out in the June issue, and it's really exciting. I'm writing it with another witch named Eurus. Our column it's called Too Many Witches. Originally, so when New Witch first came out, there used to be this column on the back page, and now I think they have it in the online version of this website, but it used to be called Good Witch, Bad Witch. And the premise was that it was an advice column, and people would write in questions, and then you had kind of like the love and light person answering the question, and then you got another perspective from like the surly goth witch, and they were bad witch, they were good witch, bad witch. And anyway, it was one of the more fun features in the magazine for several years, and Eurus and I both went through our post-adolescence reading New Witch Magazine and Good Witch, Bad Witch, and we wanted to be Bad Witch, Worse Witch, because I'll tell you what, when he and I get to drinking, some of the stuff that comes out of our mouths just we're sort of all over the place. Anyway, so that was kind of what we originally had in mind. We would write this column together, and we would answer questions, and we would both just sort of like be really frank. We have different backgrounds. We're both witches, and in a variety of traditions. Anyway, but we're both coming from like he's in California, I'm in North Carolina, and we were just going to kind of play off of our differences, but we've got similar attitudes. So anyway, it's been really funny. But in thinking about this column, what's been kind of funny is when we get questions and when we brainstorm topics together, we keep coming back to stuff that's been coming up for as long as there have been Wiccans running around. So like this very first column, look, it's our column. Look how cute we are. We're both super blonde. This very first column is about whether or not initiation is important, and whether or not someone needs to be in a coven in order to be a witch. And it's really funny, like when we were throwing ideas around and when we were actually soliciting questions from people, that was one that still was coming up. And both of us initially were just like, oh my God, people are still asking this? Like, is this real? Like, we've had Tumblr for years now at this point, people. Don't you know that you can just pretty much do whatever you want as long as you get enough likes and follows? Like, anyway, but like those issues are still significant. Thinking about initiation, when people ask, do I need to be initiated in order to be a witch? What they're really asking is, what do I need to do in order to be legit and in order for other people to treat me like I'm legit. Like, it's this question about authenticity and realness. It's not that people necessarily believe that being initiated like instantly bestows magic powers upon you, like your witchiness just transcends normal witchiness. It's not that people think that. I mean, maybe on some level, like certainly that's the case, right? In certain circumstances and particular rituals, etc. But when people ask about initiation, they're not really asking about magical power most of the time. They're asking about a place in a community and whether or not they'll be treated as real. Like, they're concerned about belonging. And likewise, when people say things like, no, you don't need to be initiated in order to be a witch, they're saying that because the idea is that the power isn't coming to you from other people. It's coming from within yourself, or it's coming from the gods, or it's coming from some other source. It doesn't have to be handed to you. Your legitimacy, your realness comes from you, essentially. Okay? But anyway, like, in tackling kind of this old question, it's just been funny reconsidering it at different points, even now, like decades later. So in this particular article, we talk a little bit about what it means to be initiated, and like where does power actually come from, like, and who has the right to call themselves a witch. I've talked about that in previous videos. Lots of other folks have written about it over the years, and I'm sure everybody here has super strong opinions. Me personally, and I talk about this in my book too, right? Like, initiation is fundamentally, to me, about a place in a community or in a particular kind of context. It's about joining a movement, whatever that movement might mean. It's about some kind of transformation from one state to another. It's not necessarily about ownership of a word like witch, right? Like, nobody owns that term. People get to use it however they want to, and it's meant different things at different points in history and to different people. And I think it's dumb for any one group or one type of people to go after other people for using it. Okay, that seems that's just kind of silly to me. So I might say something like, well, no, you don't need to be initiated in order to call yourself a witch, or maybe even to call yourself a Wiccan, but you do need to be initiated to be a Gardnerian, for example, or an Alexandrian, because these are groups that internally say that that's one of the markers of belonging. Okay, it's kind of like if I wanted to be a police officer, I would need to go to law enforcement training and become a police officer according to a particular standard in whatever state I was in. Okay, I couldn't just like go down to the dollar store and buy a badge and then expect people to treat me like I'm a police officer and get hired as part of a police force. Like, that would be silly. Like, nobody would do that. Okay, at least not seriously, right? Like, we want our doctors to go to medical school. Like, we want our priests, like, if you're a Catholic, to have a particular kind of like training in seminary, etc. Like, there are certain roles communally that we expect people to have particular kinds of training for. Okay, whether or not outsiders respect that, or whether or not other groups with similar institutions do things differently, like, that's fine. But like, amongst Gardnerians, we expect you to have undergone a particular ritual and a particular kind of training in order to be accepted internally as a Gardnerian. Okay, that doesn't have any bearing on whether or not you can be other kinds of witches or another kind of Wiccan or whatever. Like, not everybody wants to be a police officer, so like, who cares? Anyway, like, that's kind of where my head is most of the time. But anyway, if you are interested in that, or just generally like in my writing, or in meeting my friend Eurus, who's hilarious, pick up the current issue of Witches and Pagans. And if you guys have questions that you think that we should answer, or like issues, we'd particularly be interested in talking about stuff that's a little bit more on the controversial side, or at least I would. leave a comment or drop a message or something so that I know, because otherwise we're just like on Reddit pulling questions off of Reddit or something, or other places on the internet, and that can get a little bit dicey sometimes. So if you have anything burning that you'd like us to run our mouths about, let us know. But anyway, yeah, just a little tidbit there. Hope you guys are having a good week, and I'm back at work, so blurg to that. But anyway, I'm gonna go drink wine now and hit people with swords.